Hello again. Hi, Gretta.
Hi, Alp. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks a lot for taking this time to be with us. So we are with Dr. Gretta Corporaal from University of Oxford Side Business School. She's investigating the future of work, and also she's working on the platform economy. So I first came across her studies in 2017. I actually used the iWork project and on-demand workforce index in my own TED talk. So that was great to see because I was curious to have more data, and she also had a great report. So since then, I've been a follower. Thanks a lot for taking this time to be with us, Greta.
You're welcome, and thanks so much for the invitation, Alp. Really a pleasure to be part of the summit. Okay, let me go ahead and share my slides. Okay, there we go. Okay, quickly confirm if you can see them in the presentation style. Okay, I don't hear anything, so I will continue. So thanks again for the invitation. I'm going to share some of the research insights of my of the work I've been doing in the space of how organizations, and especially large and complex ones, such as the Fortune 500, are using these on-demand talent platforms. My name is Gretta Corporaal. I'm a research fellow and British Academy fellow at Side Business School, and the principal investigator of the Oxford iWork project. And when we look at the demand side, organizational demand for open talent, or what's also called on-demand talent, we see that advances in digital technologies are fueling a new wave of work transformation, where organizations can use digital platforms to have direct and on-demand access to remote experts. And this is what we in the industry have started to call open talents. And platforms for crowdsourcing or online labor, how we started to call it in academic terms, transform work. They enable organizations to tap into resources and expertise beyond their traditional boundaries. And especially for high-skilled, specialized, white-collar knowledge work, platforms and their algorithmic technologies can do so at a speed and a skill that is unimaginable compared to using conventional intermediaries. Think about outsourcing vendors or traditional staffing agencies for hiring temporary workers. So building upon your TED Talk, Alp, here is an image of the online labor index that my colleagues at Oxford have constructed. And they're measuring every day how much work is happening online on the top 5 platforms in this space. And we started measuring in 2016, and we're now in 2020. Here are the numbers from last Saturday, and you see during the COVID outbreak, there was a high spike in demand for online workers. There was a bit of a dip over the summer, but it's recovering well at the moment. And here you see the top occupations of the workers in Turkey that perform work online. And you see that the top occupations are creative and multimedia work, software development and technology. This includes data science and analytics, as well as sales and marketing support is a third category. So what you see here is that the Turkish workers that perform work online, it's really about specialized work that requires specialized skills. And here you see the top 20 countries where employer organizations use these online talent platforms to hire workers. And not surprisingly, you see that the United States and the UK occupy the top positions, but then we have a more varied picture, and a lot of the countries are in the region. So to zoom a bit further into organizational demand for on-demand talent. So while attractive in theory, there is an organizational challenge, and the challenge is about implementing this new way of working, this new way of sourcing talent into the existing internal structures and processes you have set up in your organizations. So while a lot is known about worker dynamics in terms of the academic insight we developed over the year, much of which is done by my colleagues, little is known about the demand-side organizational dynamics of adopting online labor platforms, and that is kind of my area of work. And as Alp already said, we started this researching this space in 2017. We conducted 24 case studies to understand how especially large and complex organizations use these platforms, as well as how online labor can be turned into a reliable and sustainable model of work. So let's dive a bit into that further. And here's just a little bit of theory, because using workers outside the boundary of the firm, which we call contingent work, is nothing new. It already started after the Second World War, and we also have frameworks that we can build on. And so we have a bit of an idea why organizations use external workers, which we call contingent work, for instance, to adjust the size of the workforce in response to changes in the market, or needing skills that their internal employees don't have. So that's called functional flexibility, as well as wanting to adjust the cost of human resources. Next to that, next to flexibility, organizations also tap into specialists outside their organization to accumulate knowledge and use that for innovation across the boundaries of the firm, and which also has been called open innovation. So what we are interested in understanding in my research agenda is that given that these large organizations already use a variety of providers to tap into expertise outside the boundaries of the firm, why do they now turn to these online labor platforms? What is so interesting and what is so attractive to a platform model of organizing external work compared to the established ones of the providers you're already working with? So we did a study of that. I already told you a bit about it. I won't go into the details, but here are some of the findings. And the key conclusion is that enterprises really seek a more seamless and on-demand access to specialized skills and expertise to address specific project needs. So let's unpack that a bit. So this on-demand access to resources, having specialized skills and expertise available, provides organizations the flexibility to complement their in-house workforce. They are also seeking to lower the cost of starting up a project and lower the overhead of tapping into external expertise. And platforms provide them the ability to quickly hire freelancers to address those specific project needs. Compared to when you look at these traditional providers, there are also several barriers or boundaries to hire someone externally. For instance, geographic boundaries, that you can only find them in your local region. There are informational boundaries, you don't have the knowledge about the skills of the workers, as well as administrative barriers inside your organization. And what a platform offers them to do is overcome these barriers. It's the ability to bring those specialized skills and knowledge into the organization that otherwise would have remained outside. And what I prepared for you now is to dive a little bit into 3 of the cases. And I will share the stories of a company you're probably familiar with, Samsung, who's okay with mentioning their name, and the other 2 have been anonymized. But you see they're in similar industries, technology and healthcare. I call them Golf and Foxtrot. They have more than 10,000 employees. And what you see here in the 3rd line, the stage in the adoption process, you see they are in different stages. So Samsung, at the time of the study, just completed a pilot with on-demand talent platforms. Golf had used it for several years and decided to adopt it in one vertical in their organization, especially in the customer support, and a little bit in another vertical regarding software development. Foxtrot, however, went for enterprise-wide adoption. They used it across the enterprise for different types of work, such as design, video production, as well as software, IT, and networking technology developments. So let's go ahead and dive a bit into Samsung. And I spoke with Kathleen, who is a finance and operational excellence leader. And what we see here, their key motivation to adopt platforms is that they felt they had to adapt to the changing pace of work. And with that, she meant that the pace of work inside Samsung has been progressed and speeded up much faster than the pace of work of their traditional vendors. And so they saw platforms as an alternative to staffing agencies that would better match how work was happening internally. So project leaders in the lab often face 2-week project delivery times from their headquarters, as you can see in the first quote on the right. But their traditional agencies usually needed 6 weeks on average to provide a contractor, and this caused significant project delays. And what you should be mindful of here is that Samsung, this was their research center in the Americas, and they did highly specialized work. So they needed contractors with specific skills, specific training, and the traditional agencies they worked with had a really hard time finding people with those skills and with that training, but the platform had them available on their marketplace, and because the way they matched, they could easily find them. And Kathleen concluded here that this vendor agency model has fundamentally become a broken model because internally we do not operate like that anymore. And they ran a pilot. It was hugely successful. For some positions, they were able to find someone within 24 hours. And so, as he concluded, this is very fast. It's a drastically different pace of work than they could do with their traditional vendors. Let's dive into the second case, and mind this is a pseudonym of the company. And I spoke with the program lead of a freelancer customer support program for one of the company's mobile applications. And Gina's program comprised 150 freelancers she hired off of the platform, and 80% of which worked full-time. And Gina really saw using the platform as an alternative to offshoring. And to tell you a bit about the nature of the work, so their mobile applications, they had regular software updates. And so to provide good customer support, the agents had to be aware of the updates that happened and had to have knowledge of the specific technologies that went into the application and what exactly changed and how to fix problems. And so continuously they had to upskill the knowledge of the agents. And with the traditional offshore center, they were unable to speak with customer support agents directly, but with the platform they could. So the platform provided them direct communication with the agents, and also the agents could ask questions where they didn't completely understand what had changed in the product. It also offered, time zone, cultural, and language support. And here you see they now have global coverage and native support in 15 languages. Gina could talk directly with the freelancers. She could directly guide them, and they could get information from the source as opposed to hearing it from multiple people that didn't know what was going on. And so they were able to provide a much better customer experience by having better integration between the freelancers hired through the platform and the people inside the organization. Okay, then moving on to the third case I'd like to discuss with you today. And this is with Rajiv, who is a global procurement category manager at the Fortune 500 organization. And Rajiv was really being embedded in procurement of a more streamlined freelancer management solution. The platform provided a faster, more cost-effective and streamlined alternative to working with agencies. They discovered that agencies were unfit for smaller projects. They were also unable to meet on-demand last-minute requests and often had difficulty finding specialists And therefore, they had to manage multiple agency relations for projects, which of course was a lot of administrative hassle. And so Foxtrot, the company, and Rajiv, they had been on this journey very early on, since 2011. They really they went for enterprise-wide adoption. And he's telling here about like what has to happen inside the firm. So here he says, traditionally you're used to bringing in a person on site. And I think it's really looking at that work to see if it can also be done virtually. It's much more effective and it's speedier. And I think the talent that you can capture in this space are very top-end individuals that might be able to help with your project needs. And here he emphasizes that, as a program management layer, Rajiv really worked with business partners throughout the organization to get them to think differently about work. And that's what I would like to turn to next, is how can we think differently about work? What is this broader transformation of work? What is it actually about? And what we see is this model of working with on-demand talents, finding these high-skilled experts through platforms and engaging them and connecting them with your team also requires a change in internal organizing. And you see that enterprises are moving from these relatively static hierarchical structures based on fixed roles, and they move towards more open, fluid, and dynamic ones that are based in projects and tasks. And this is what I call project and task-based forms of organizing. This provides enterprises with speed, flexibility, and efficiency that is needed to stay innovative and competitive in the current environment. And online labor platforms, adopting them is kind of part of that transformation of work. And especially because the technologies they use, such as their algorithmic matching, they enable enterprises to get high quality work done in a cost-effective manner. But at present, this is what my research supports, the process often isn't seamless. And that is because of how the interface is set up between the organization and the platform. And in the study, I identified some elements of successful platform adoption. Very important is, do your homework, explore this space, and being at this summit is an amazing way to learn more about it. Also, secure executive support. This is really necessary if you want to not only use it in one department, but going for enterprise-wide adoption, and involving those key stakeholders such as at finance, HR, and your lawyers, and involving them early on in the conversation so they know what you're talking about. Creating a program management layer is a third one, and also thinking about the transformation of work as innovation. Creating a space for experimentation where people can explore. They have resources to explore and do experiments, and they're also allowed to fail. That's very important because through innovation, through experimentation, you see where this model of work fits with your internal organizational culture. And so when you go further and you want to scale up your sourcing process with platforms, here are just a few elements to consider. Thinking about like a triage process that Rajiv talked about, thinking about what the role of HR and procurement is, as well as thinking of, how do I expand from one category or vertical of work to another? And basically, we know a bit, but much more knowledge is needed. And let me end with some conclusions and implications. So what we see is this model of work where you use on-demand talent that you engage through online labor platforms. It affords organizations the possibility to seamlessly bring in external talent on demand. But the value really depends on how you set up the interface with the platform. And so both platforms and enterprises have to reflect on how they structure their interface and organize for a scalable sourcing process. Enterprises should really view adoption of this new model of work as innovation in work and organizing, which I call the digital transformation of work, and consider where and how they internally can leverage this more fluid, open, and dynamic model of work. More research is called upon, especially to understand the skills and technologies, as well as the learning practices of successful sourcing through platforms. And this is where my research of the next couple of years is focused on. And I'd be happy to talk about that further. To kick off the Q&A, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And over to you, Al.
Thank you, Greta. Amazing insights, as usual. It was very interesting to see the numbers from Turkey as well. So thanks a lot for sharing those.
You're welcome.
So for the final implications, when you say interface, do you mean the digital interface, or are you talking about offline elements as well?
I talk about offline elements as well. I see it as a social technical interface. So there are several humans involved, as well as the way technically you connect. For instance, traditional staffing interface, it's often a vendor management system in which the vendor is set up, and where procurement can quickly input like what types of resources they need, and then they look at what vendors are able to supply it. So you connect like the database inside the organization with the database of the vendor, and there you can do the match. When you think about, okay, when you adopt a platform that provides you external talent, can you use the same interface? Well, that interface actually had two people on both sides that work in a specific way, and it was more the human connection rather than the technological matching that was developed. And what you see with a platform model, of course, it's humans plus AI, but there is more technology involved, and that's the advantage. That's the speed. That's the informational capacity that a platform provides, is by relying on that technology. And in order to reap the benefits and the value of using it, you should think of whether the interface you have set up now is the same one that you can use with a platform. And often companies come to the conclusion that they have to make some adjustments there.
Perfect. And probably customizations depending on the type of company, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So when you have analyzed many different companies. So when you look at how they adapted, are there any companies that you see distinguish more in terms of faster adaptation and reaping its benefits?
What we've seen is that the companies that adapted faster, for instance, the Samsung case, they had done a lot of study up front. So they really understood the space. They really carved out what their current business need is. And this was especially in their innovation center to meet those high-skilled specialists for short-term projects. And that's where you saw that the company internally already had like a project-based form of organizing work, and they needed some external skills. The existing setup couldn't supply that, and so they tapped into the platform. That's where they did like the pilot was 3 months, and after that they went for complete adoption. So they did research. They did their research upfront of what is available to them. They had a clear business case that they knew they had to adapt to this aspect of the future of work, and they gave the space to Kathleen to really look at, okay, how should we explore the fit, where it fit with our organization, where can we leverage the benefits of platforms, and where do we have to do the work internally, for instance. And because there was given space for experimentation, there were resources. She was nominated to guide this transformation. Adoption went fast there.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So before we end the session, how do you see the impact after the COVID-19? Both for the impact near term and longer term, and from your own perspective, where do you think this is going? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Alp. And well, I showed you the online labor index, and you first saw the big peak, and during when we all started to work remote, and I didn't show you like the breakdown in terms of what occupations, but the peak was caused predominantly by IT and software engineering. And what I think explains it, and this is just interpreting the data that we see, is that a lot of companies were not remote ready, and they had to build a lot of infrastructure because they very quickly had to adapt to a complete remote operation. And so their IT departments were overloaded with work. They couldn't handle it. So they brought in these experts to adapt to remote operations. And that also explains why after the spike, it went down again, because then all the infrastructure was in place. So what we now have is a world of organizations that know how to work remote. It mightn't be super efficient yet, but they're able to do that. That's what we learned in the past couple of months. And there was a big gap over the big jump in hiring over the summer, because we were all like adjusting to having to combine our work lives and private lives, and all the boundaries blurred, and COVID pandemic, and now you see the increase again. This of course comes together with the financial recession that came with COVID. So we don't know. There are different scenarios. Some people speculate that it's the end of full-time employment, and we will just become all remote freelancers. I don't think that's the future. I think you need an internal core that can integrate the work of the specialists, and you need to provide an internal core with freelancers that they can tap into on demand when their workload increases. And that's like some of the models I've seen in organizations, how they start to think about work, and that they have a budget that they can allocate to employees that have direct access to the platform, and especially with specialized work such as software and IT, they can select the freelancers they would like to work with. Content marketing is another area where the same model of work applies, and I think that's likely what the future is. But of course, I'm not an economist, and I'm also not in charge of an organization. So it really depends on your own culture as well, how this evolves.
Yeah, but we can definitely say the ones that adapt faster will have critical competitive advantages, I suppose. So yeah, Greta, thanks a lot for taking this time, and it was wonderful to have your insights, and great that you shared your work and your vision with us. So the next will be here. The next will be a yoga session. In case you want to join, the language is internet is universal. So.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds very nice. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Yes, it was our pleasure and honor. Thanks so much.